Okay. HaMitzvah, mitzvah HaSholosh V'Shishim, which is the mitzvah of the law of Chilul Hashem. Ishis Hanu Bichilul Hashem, Al Chilul Hashem, V'Uhefech Kiddush Hashem. It's the opposite. Shnitztavinu boy, Shekodem Bi'uroi, B'Tshiyis Mi Mitzvah Say. So in the ninth mitzvah say, in the mitzvah say of Kiddush Hashem, and this, the Ashora is the opposite. So a priori, the Chiddush is only that there's a mitzvah say. It's because the Pasuk says, Lo Yisachal L'Shem Kodshi, V'Nikdashti B'Serech B'nei Yisrael. So you could have assumed V'Nikdashti is it's called a Kodesh. V'Nikdashti, and the Rebbeinu is talking about himself, he will become Kodesh B'Serech B'nei Yisrael. So you would have assumed if one is not B'Chal Shem Kodeshi, so Mamela, the Rebbeinu shall be Miskadesh B'Serech B'nei Yisrael. But however, the Ram learns and that there is a mitzvah say. Okay, but that's not negay to us. That was negay then in the mitzvah Shiur. But there's a law of l'schalish and kochi that is pretty clear. Now, the Ram says, "V'ha'ovein hazeh," this law, this hashor, this isur, this ma'asavera, yecholek l'shloish chalokim. There's three parts. Shnayim kolulim, two which are on the whole population. V'echod miyuchod, and one of them is on a small segment of the population. And we'll see about them one at a time. So now let's start with the first chelik. Ulam, the ulam, achelik koechod akilel, which applies to the whole population. Shekol mi shebikshu mimenu la'avo al dovo min hamitzvos b'shas hashmad v'hoye ha'oines, and the person who is forcing, the ones means he's trying to make the person do an involuntary act. In other words, it's not at the person's volition. He's putting a gun to his head and says, "You don't do this, I'm going to kill you." V'hoya oines miskavein lahavir bein mitzvahs kalos bein mitzvahs chaburos. So he has two things over here. It's b'shas hashmad, and the ma'anes is mechaye, is mischaven. It's not mischaven anos atzmoi. Is mischaven lahavir. He wants the person, the ma'anes, the oines, the person who is ma'anes, is mischaven that the person should violate the Torah. Lahavir bein mitzvahs kalos bein mitzvahs chamuros. And mishi yavakish meno shiavo ala budizo gila reis shchus domim vafilu shloi b'shas hashmad. So the two categories. There's shas hashmad lahaviroi bein mitzvah, or mishi yavakish mimeno shiavo al ala budizo gila reis shchus domim. In here, we don't know. He doesn't say lahavir, but we'll have to see about that. But in the first case, in Shas Hashmad by itself is not enough. You need lahavir al adas. And then There's the Gimel Averis, Shaloi B'Sas Hashmat. He says, Hine hu chayiv lahatir nafshoi b'yog val yavo. Kamo shebianu b'cheese mi-mitzvasei. Or the mitzvasei of Kiddush Hashem is mechayiv b'yog val yavo. V'imova v'loi nerag. And if he doesn't do it, then comes in the lav. V'imova v'loi nerag kvar chilas Hashem v'yog val lav zeh. Berabim, Kol Masho Yisrael, Kvar Chilas Hashem Berabim, V'Yov Ha'omoy Yis'ale Lo Yischal L'Shem Kodesh. So he only introduces Fahesia later. So you get the impression that Fahesia is meaningless in terms of Yehovah Yavo. The two categories. There's Shas Hashmad, Lavio Adas, and the Gimel Averis. Okay. But before we start anything, okay, before we get involved in this, it's very clear from the Rambam that the lav of Chilul Hashem applies not only to the Gimel Averis, but also to Shas Hashmat, Lavil Adas. Because in any of these cases, if the V'imova v'loi nerag, Chilas Hashem, v'yova lav zeh. So it means any situation of Yehog Ve'al Yavo, if he's not nerag, there's a violation of a law of Leischal Hashem Kodesh. The problem is that the Talmud only quotes this law in one peculiar case, only by Avodah Zarah b'Fahesia. And it's also not on the Talmud, but it's in the Sefer. It's the Sefer in Achrei Mois, Parashiches, Perek Yud Gimel, Yud Dalet, the Gemara Sanhedrin, and Ayin Dalet of an Aleph, and the Gemara of the Zohar, Chav Zayin Mabei. So every time the Talmud mentions it, or the Sefer, it's about Avodah Zarah b'Fahesia. The Sanya, Hoy Rav Yishmael Oimer, Minayin Shim Oimim Loili Odom. Avoid Zorah, the Alte Horeg, Sheyavoid, the Al Yehoreg, Talmud V'chaybem Shelo Yomus Behem. So Bishmo's opinion is you're talking violate Avodah Zorah. Yochol Afilu B'Fahesia. Maybe if it's Vahesia, it should also be Yavov Yahoiv. So the whole Vesal Shem Kochi, according to Ishmael, was only formulated in the case of the Zohar Vahesia. And we don't know anything in the Talmud that there's a Leischal Shem Kochi in other cases. The Rambam is very clear over here that we say Yehorig Val, we say Leischal same Kochi. In any case, Yehorig Val Yavo. Hey, B'Shas Hashmad Lavil Adas, and the Gimel Averis. So even though in Talmud we wouldn't know this, the Tosefta in Shabbos would support the Rambam's approach. Tosefta in Perek Tezayin Alocha Yudalit. Ein l'chodove she'oim l'fnei pikuach nefesh, chutz me'avodah zarah v'gil harayis v'shviras dom. Pa'am advorim amurim shlo b'shas ha'gzeira shas hashmat, aber b'shas ha'gzeira afilu mitzakala shebakalos odem noisein nafshoy oleho. Shenema lo yisachalu es shein kodesh. So l'cheira, that the Sefer is really saying that wherever there's Yehog Val Yavo, there's Lois Chalas in Kochi. And Rambam not only says this here, but he says this in Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah in Perek Hey from Oloch Aleph to Gimel. Okay. So first of all, the first pashat in Rambam is that there's a law of l'schalas in Kochi wherever there's Yehog Val Yav, and that l'chayre is supported by Tosefta. What we have in Teres Kohanim and in the Talmud is a discussion of Yishmael. Rabbi Yishmael's opinion is that even Avodah Zarah is Yavol Yehogas Behesya, but that's not the psak. But wherever it's Yehog Val Yavo, that's not a machlekes. Wherever it is Yehog Val Yavo is Los Chalish in Koch. The problem is that there's a case missing because the Gemara seems to say that in Bafahesya, in Shar Averos, Yehog Val Yavo feel Shalom B'Shmas Hashmad. The Gemara in Hedgein Dalam and Aleph. Ki also Rabdimi Rabbi Yechanan lo yishon l'shalom b'shas hashmad. Avo shas hashmad afilu mitzvah kali Yehog Val Yavo. Ki also Rovin Rabbi Yechanan afilu shalom b'shas hashmad lo b'sinah. Avo fehesia afilu mitzvah kali Yehog Val Yavo. So the chayes mechum foolish in the Gemara according to Rovin that we say Yehog Val Yavo even in shalom b'shas hashmad in fehesia. And the Rambam interprets that which is Vehesia is Yehog Val Yavo is only Lavir Adas. Even Shalom B'Shas Hashmad. The Rambam says in the Fush, in Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah, in Perek Hey Halacha Beis, Bamad V'Mamud Bizman She'Oived Kachom Loy, but the Zohar probably Miskaven Lanos Atzmo, going She'Onsoi Livnois Loy Beisoi. Shabbos, right? But he wants the house. It's not that he's worried about Shabbos and not Shabbos. He's interested in his house. Or the Vashal Tavshil, he wants to eat the Tavshil. Or Onas Isha Leboalo, Ukiyetze Bezer. He just wants to know Atzma. Avodim Niskaven Lahavila La Mitzvah. La Mitzvah is Bilvad. Im Hoye Ben Elvein Atzmoy. The Ancient Masom Yisrael, Yavli so it means that Shalom B'Shas Hashmad on all Averis is Yehog Val Yavo. If it's Lavir Al Adas. Avol im Niskam Lavir Al Mitzvahs Bilvad. So I'm not sure if it's this. There's no Tarev, it's only Lavir Al Mitzvahs. Im Hoya. Bein Elvein Atzmai, if he ain't Shom Asor, be Israel, Yavo Yehog, Nimonso, Elaviro, Basor, Israel, Yehog Val Yavo. Vafilu Liskam Laviro, Ela Al Mitzvah, Misham Mitzvah Bovad. So it's very clear in Rambam that we say Yehog Val Yavo not only on B'Shas Hashmad, but also in B'Fahesia. But both of them is only Laviro Adas. This also is not only in the Rambam, in Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah, but you find it also in Igeres Hashmad, that B'Fahesia, Afilu Shalom B'Shas Hashmad, is Yehog Val Yav. And there also is clear, like over here, then Shas Hashmad, you require Lavir Al Adas. V'shar mitzvahs kulon milvad B'sham is cool muvad elu asholish. Im wants aleim oinis yabit im lanos atzmo niskaven yavo v'yore. Bein b'shas hashmad, bein shlo b'shas hashmad, bein b'seis me v'hesya. V'rai l'dovo zeh בפרק בן סעור מוירה, הוא אסת בפהסי, הוא אסת קרקע עולמי. רוב העומר הנוס עצמו ישייני, וקיימלן לא קרובו. אם כן, נסבוי לכו, שכל זמן שנסחבן הנוס עצמו, יבוא ויהוד, אפילו בפהסיה ובשס השמד. ואם נסחבן להעבירוי על הדס. So it means that even in the Gimel Averis, you require the Avil Adas because talking about Arayis in Esther. Yavo Violi, Afilu Behesia, Bishas Ashmad, Vim, this Kavan Aviroi, Yabit Mokain, Imoi, so Asahi, Shas Ashmad, Yogba Yabo, Ben Bitsina, Ben Begoli, Vim Hoys, Shlibis Ashmad, Im Hoya Besaisa, Yavo Violi, Hoya Behesia, Yogba Yabo. So both in Mishnah Torah and in the Igeres Hashmad, it's very clear that Mifahesia Lavio Adas in Sharav is also Yahweh Yavo. The others, this is not the Rambam, the Smak, in Mitzvah Gimel, in the Mordechai, and Hedgesim Tovshin Yotes, of the opinion that Yehovah Yavo Bekabonal Avio Adas, Afilu B'tzina, but that's not the Gatos. The Ram Shita is that B'fahesia Lavio Adas, Shasashmad Lavio Adas. And over here, the Ram doesn't mention Fahesia Lavio Adas. So, you can ask yourself a question. No, so why does the Ram leave it out here? I don't think there's that to say he disagrees from all and everything. So I would assume that this is only Prate Mitzvahs, and in Mitzvahs, he's not responsible to say every single case. That's what I'm wondering. I can't say for sure, but it's very clear that this case is not here. Even more, you can say he talks about Vahesia, but his discussion of Vahesia is only to tell you that there's a new chayme in the lab of Leischal Shem Kochi. He's not interested in telling anything about Yogav Yavu. That's what he says. V'im hoyo berabim ze berabim kloima vasom Yisrael kvar chilas Hashem berabim. It's the same love, but it's brab. Okay. Now, l'cheira, Pash the Rambam is that there's an equation. What do I mean? There's an equation between Shas Hashmad and Avil Adas and the Gimel Averis. There's no separate chumrah of L'chal Shem Kochi in Gimel Averis, which are Avil Adas, even B'tzina, from the Shar Averis, when it's Shas Hashmad and Avil Adas. It's all the same. That's what I assume, the way he's saying over here. Doesn't make a difference. However, Rabbeinu Yoina seems to say there's a separate chumrah of Chil Hashem in Gimel Averis Chamuros. Rabbeinu Yoina Meseres Avos, אבל בשלושת דבורים כל אדם חייב להוג עליהם ואם יעבור ועל יהורג הוא עוון פלילי כבוד זורו ושפיכת דם מגיע הרייס וחיל להשם בפהסיה. אין שוי גודל מכל אלו הגימל וכולי. So you get the impression הנה נסבוי לכו ביוסר הקפיד במה שהויו עבדים עבודה זרה ובני שהויו מחלנס השם קודשי בפהסיה מן עבודה זרה עצמו. So I get the impression of Yoina there's a separate chum in the Gimel Averis. In Chil Hashem. Is that the reason, according to him, that it's Yehog Val Yavo? Basically, it. But the Rama V'chera, the Avera, is the same. V'yov Alav Zeh. But for Hesia is a separate chum in all of them. I mean, Yoina's Masha is separate chum in Gimel Averis. It's okay to say that. Now, Avo Eino Chai Malkus. V'cheto Godol Mirei. Avo Eino Chai Malkus. Even in the case, even before Hesia. He says, "Im Ovav Nera Kvachilas Hashem BiOvalav Zeh Bim Hoyev Rabim Ischat Godol Meoid." Avo, even in that case, Eino Chayim Malkus Bibnei Shuhu Onus Ki Ein Lebezdin Lekayim Gede Malkus by Misa Elo Al Mezid Berotzein Be'edim Basro, which the Ram explained before, that the chiyuv of Malchus and Mrs. Bezdin, Kolis is only Mezid Basro. So here, since it's not under his volition, so he's not Chayim Malchus. Here, Ram does the same thing also in Mishnah Torah. B'chol mi enema boy Yehog Val Yavo v'nema Yehog V'Ova V'Lo Nera Garizim Mechalas Hashem V'yim Hoy Basom Yisrael Zim Mechachil Hashem V'Rabim U'Bito Mitzvasei Shekilas Hashem V'Ova Mitzvasei Shechil Hashem V'Af Bikein V'Shova B'Yines Ein Malkin Oisai V'Ein Soch Loim V'Misan Oisai Ebe'ezdin V'Im V'Afilu Horag B'Yines שאין מלכין ומיסן, אלא ליובה ברצון ואידם ועשרו, שנאמר, ונויסים מזר למוילך, ולסעתי אני אספוני, ואיש ההוא, מפי השמוע לומדו, ההוא ולאונס, לא שוגג, ולא ימותה. ומה עם עבודה זו, which is מוילך, שהיא חמור מן הכל, אויבי דויסו באינס, אינו חייב קורס, ואין צורך למיסס בזדן קל וחרימו לשאר מצווס המורס בתורה ובהרע ישראל נעשה דובו. That's there, and he also does the same thing. Loshe Sifro, ונויסי מזר למוילך, ונוסעתי אני אספוני בישהו, אמרו, ההוא, the חכמים בסרס, ההוא ולא יוינס, honest, lo shogeg v'lo mute. His boy lecho she'over avodah zara ba'ines eino chayiv koros choshkein Mrs. Bezdin avol ova al chil Hashem. Okay. We'll come back to this, but the question we'll just ask now at the moment. We'll see the discussion later. He says, whatever it is, avol eno chayiv malchus. So malchus man doctor shmei. With malchus for what? And we'll see him, Hashem. He says, not chayiv malchus. The question, for what? Okay. Does it mean for chil Hashem? We'll see. Lean in. Now, B'chelik Hasheni. Now we're going on to the second category, and here we'll have some clue about the Malchus also, because here he's going to say that he's Chayim Malchus. B'chelik Hasheni, Hakil Gamkein, Sheyase Odom Aveiro, Ain't Taiva Bo, V'lo Hano. He gets nothing for it. There's no urge. V'lo Hano, he doesn't gain anything from it. Elo Yechavim B'Kulosov. But you see, it's not that. But what is it? El Yechavim B'Kulosoi Hamered Uprikas El Malchus Shamayim. He wants to rebel against Bezin Shamayim, against the Uban Shalom. That is the way Ibn Tibin does it. In Ibn Eyob, it's his Mechavin Haschik V'Halag V'Hitul. And the Kapach is Azilzul V'Afkeris. Okay. So let's just try to understand before we go on. What does it mean? The Mered, the Prikas Malchus Shamayim. What does he want here in Ram? So, what he means is that since he's not doing it for any ulterior purpose, he's not a Meshuman L'Te'ovain, there's no Hano, there's no Taiva. So he's doing it b'derech zilzul. And that's what it means, mered. That's how, since it's b'derech zilzul, so it's a mered uprikas o malchus shamayim. Igeres hashmad, the Ram says like this: Shias echem ibnei odom aveira lahachis lo yaseno l'tanug o arevus sheimsa ma'isa. He doesn't gain anything from it. Elo liyoisa kal v'nivze be'enov. This is it's not worth it. It's a meaningless performance. There's no meaning to mitzvahs. And because he said the Atera in Perek Hey Halacha Yud, he says Kol oiver midatoi b'loy oines oy al achas mikol mitzvahs v'amuris b'Atera b'shot b'nefesh lahachas. So this interesting word b'shot b'nefesh, what does it mean? See here the Radak in Yecheskel in Chof Hey Tesvov, Diva Maskul b'shot b'nefesh, the exact words the Ram is taken from Yecheskel. B'bizoyin shehoyim mevazin oisam b'nafshoisam lahora lahem derech bizoyin b'koloi. So he's mevazeh the mitzvahs, he's mevazeh Torah. Maybe this is Rashi's Kavona in Rashi in Vayikra Chav Beis Lamed Beis Lo Yisachalu Lavo Al Dvorai Mezid. Vav, shekol hamivazeh afilu mitzvah achas umekel. Klal b'kovod shamayim nikol machalas Hashem. Let's go on. So this is, he's pushing Mevazah Torah. Mevazah Malchus Shamayim. Amer because all Malchus Shamayim. Now, what it means is that he's chelik on Torah. He holds that Torah is not emes. And this is the chelik, Kavodas HaTalmud Shemeshuma Lahachis, is a min. He's a kaifer. The Gemara of the Zohar, Chavav Beis, Hoyes Yirah from an Alpha, Meshuma Lahachis. The Rambam in the Vuchim, in Chelik Gimel, Perek Mem Aleph, Avol Oise Biyod Romo, Hu HaMezid, Sheyoyis Ono, V'Yavu V'Hesia, Shezeinu Oiva L'Tei Oboim, Levad, V'Lalaseis Ma, Shemono HaTorah L'Asoisei, L'Royem Midoisev Levad. He's not, he can't control himself. B'chulei, V'Afilu Ochal Odem MiYisrael, Bosa B'Cholov, O Lova Shatnis, O Hikiv Das, Sheyizboye Mimeno, She'eno Mamin, Shezeis HaTeira Emes. He believes the Torah is not emes, or this Torah is not emes. Who etzli hanem olav es Hashem hu megade. So Chayra, Pshat and Rambam is because the whole Torah is not emes, and that's the Rambam Pirush Mishnayis in Perek Yud. In Mishnah Aleph, that's in Perek Chelik, the way the Mishnayos are in Ram's Mishnayos. So with the Chelik is Perek Yud, and there he says, you say that Shmini. That's the side of Termin Hashemayim. And the Min is Kaifa in that. There's a longer discussion if you're interested in Hamikdava, in Bamidbar Perek Tezvav, Pasuk Lamed. There's a Shuvas Arash, but you might find of interest the Chelik Aleph. So what it did is Ein Taivabo, V'lo Hano, Avicham Pulosai Hamed. Shem Shomayim Mechayiv Malchus. So the question is, what is the Malchus for? But before we talk what the Malchus for, the point is that Malchus is the Einish, but he might be chayiv even something more. Shalobater is Einish, and that is he's chayiv moridim v'lamalin. Vucha Chelik Gimel, Perek Mem Aleph, Avo, Ha'oise biyod Romo, Hu Hamei says Logoy Midois Blabat, Avolachok Alatei Volamo Kinegdo. We've been there Om Hashem Hashem Gadif, which I read already. Who Yehore Shabbos. Or Hikim. As shenisboye mimenu she'enoi mamin shezeh teremes hu etzli anema olav es Hashem u'magadev ve'horeg misas kfiro loy misas oynish. So Malchus doch the oynish, but it's a misas kfiro kanche oni dachas. It's interesting. It's not an oynish. She'ogu misas keflim loy misas oynish. L'zeh mamonim b'scheifa. Ve'enom liyosheim kishachu gebez. It's not a misas. It's arigas keflim. What happened? What is the Chiyuv Malchus about here? In the Meshumad Lahachis. So l'chera, you would have said it's for the lav l'schal Hashem kochi. Minchas Chinuch clearly learns like that. In Mitzaresh Tzadi Hey Tzadi Vav Resh Tzadi Vav, when he explains the Ram Binyan Mitzvah Shaloikin Halas Halas Chal Hashem. Hashem is only Tetzor for the Mai.
No, the drop. Okay.
Okay, so I'll continue. Did I miss anything now? I just was talking about why there should be Malchus. Why there should be Malchus over here. We said it's because it's Chalas and Kochi. That's the way the Minchas Chinuch learns. So in order to try to understand, there's another approach, but let's just continue reading before I mention the other approach. Hine ze gam machal shem shamayim b'chayiv Malchus ulefikach oma v'loisishovu b'shmi lashoker v'chilalto eshem elokecho ki ze mechavim lahachis b'zeh o'inyan v'ein hano gashmis b'zeh. Okay. Now comes the Osameach and does an amazing thing. The Osameach, and look, you say that table in Perek Hey Halacha Yud says the Chiyuv Malchus is because of Sheker. So that's one of the cases. It's one of the cases was Chil Hashem. And in that case, Yechai Malchus, I guess. I don't know. That's what he says. So I just don't get how the Ram could say Loike before he mentions Loisi Shav L'Shmila Shoker. That sounds a little bit odd to assume that he gets Malchus for something which he hasn't mentioned yet. And you can add it going back when he says that he's Eino Loike, he's also talking about that here he's not looking like he's showing the Shoker. So what does he get Malchus for? So that's why I assume Minchas Chinuch case. He says, I don't know, the he basically says the Osameach that there's no Malchus by Lois Yisrael, Lois Chalashim Kochi, because the Lav should be closed. Close case? I don't know. That's what he says because it gets its clear this type of Isa of Yehovah Yavo and Shumalachis and the last guy, I don't know. That's what he says, but I think it's very difficult reading the Rambam, what he said. Case, I don't know. The interesting is this whole thing, according to Rambam, is probably academic, to say the least, because in Mishnah Torah, the Rambam doesn't mention Malchus. The Rambam in Hilchos Yisrael Torah Perek Hey and in Hilchos Sanhedrin Perek Yutes Halacha Daled, there's no mention of a Malchus of Leischal Hashem Kochi, or in a case where he's not. So maybe according to the Rambam Mishnah Torah, it's a problem that there's no the Maisa, the Chil Hashem there's no Maisa, it's only takes off from his Maisa. You want to say he learns that like the Sameach, that's Lav because you can do whatever you like. But the Rambam Mishnah Torah has no Malchus, but here clearly he has Malchus. Okay, now let's go back to his comment over here. Hine ze gam kein mechal shem shamayim. B'chayim Malchus lefikoch omar v'yishob b'shmil hashoker v'chilaltu Hashem Elokecha. Because I guess Shvur Sheker, anyone who violates Shvur Sheker, the kavod, that's the Torah says v'chilaltu Hashem Elokecha. The Shvur Sheker is Chil Hashem. So I assume that the Chilalta B'Shem Elokecha is in a Shvur Lioval, where he says that X is Y or X is X, but if he's Nishba'al Abba and he wants to eat he says he's not going to eat the bread or something like that, and then he eats it. Maybe he's hungry and he's doing the te'ova, and the Chilalta Shem Elokecha l'cheira is because it's lahachis his beirei, and he's amazing, and he's the nishbam amazing. That's what I would assume. Maybe I'm wrong. The problem is a dual problem. First of all, since the Rambam clearly says that the law applies to Shvul Abba, so what's Vichlal Tashem Elokecha? It's a Meshum Lahachis, or that Shvul Pesei is Chil Hashem, a separate case. So I'm very confused over here. What's the gain? And Befrat, if you remember, we pointed out the Ram over here only mentions Shvul Abba when he talks about Shvul Sheker. Very confusing. Now, here I'll just do something. I'm just, and then he has the last line here. Kizeh mechavin lahachiz bezeh. Bezeh or inyan. V'ein hano'o gashmis bezeh. He doesn't have a physical hano. So the question is, does the Rambam actually mean that he needs a physical hano? See, I would have assumed, reading this Rambam, that the main thrust over here, that the case is, the Chil Hashem, is that he's Meshum Lahachis. He wants to declare war on the Rebbeinu Shalom on Torah. Torah is not emes. So the stress is that you need Hanor Gashmis, or the stress is that he's occurring war on Torah. So comes the Chafetz Chaim. And this is where it comes interesting. I don't know. I don't know if I would have said this. I'm quoting now. Comes the Chafetz Chaim in his Psicha to the Chafetz Chaim in Be'emayim Chaim Lavin Oizvov. He takes the double portion that Chil Hashem is because there's no Hanor Gashmis. And therefore, he says in Mesapa Loshen Hora, there's no Hanor Gashmis. He writes, V'oivanami hamisaper v'chulei shem kochi hu mi ma shekosav Rambam b'Sefer HaMitzvos Samar Gimel she'esiu mechilu Hashem v'oven ze yichal l'koshos v'chodem v'chelek habeis k'sheyase odem aveira ein taiva bo v'lo ano hine ze mechal Hashem gam kein v'choma l'sovish v'l'shoke ch'ral t'Shem elokecho ani Hashem ki ze mechaven l'achis b'zeh o inyan v'ein hanor gashmis b'zeh u'pirushay harei hu כי מכוון להכיס בזה העניין שאין לו הנאה גשמיס בו. And Mela, it depends upon hanea gashmis, so you can move in Lashon Hora also. So I'm just a little bit confused because the Ram stresses that he's out, he's mechaven, v'pulasei hameret, u'prikas ol malchus shamayim. I'm not trying to mind Lashon Hora, but the person who has, the juicy Lashon Hora and just can't control himself to say it, he's b'shot b'nefesh l'hachis, and his misasa, you morid him l'maylim. So to say you need hanor gashmis, or Hanor Smomon, or Kedema, and I think in the Chofetz Chaim it's Hanor Gashmis, but I'm telling you, that's what he says. Say that. Maybe the problem is mine, but I just, I can't say that I understand it 100%. Now, let's see the next category. V'chelik hamiyuchod, the chelik which is not on the general population. Hu sheyase odom yadua b'ma'alo, a person who's a very special individual. B'ma'ale v'atoiv pu'ulo, v'mayla v'atoiv, he sheyase odom yadua b'ma'alo v'atoiv. I guess a comma over here. Pu'ula achas teroe le'enei ha'amoin shehu aveira u'she'ein dimyon ha'poel ha'hu roi le'nichbat kamoyu la'asos. Or if he does something which this Adam Gadol in the mind of the Hamonam, in Adam Gadol should not have done this. Af api sheyi hapoel muter. Hine hu chilel es Hashem. Hu amram hechi domi chil Hashem. Kagoin ano dishakilno bisra. I took from a butcher meat, and I didn't give him money immediately. Well, be ploni oma going on no the masgino alba amois that if according to Ploni, that if you go Dalar Ambus without Torah, Bulay Tfilin, That's a Chil Hashem. Amazing thing. Okay. The question in the Mila. Now, here we have to go slow. The Rambam here quotes only a case of an Odom Choshuv who does ma'asim which don't meet up to the gold standard that you would have expected from him. In Igeres Hashmad, the Rambam seems to say that there are other categories that you can hit the Odom Choshuv for and say it's Chil Hashem. If he speaks, Bekas would be Zoya Ima Brios, which is not mentioning over here. The Ram in Igeres Hashmad is like this. Va'proti yicholek lishnei chalokim. This case, which is the proti, there are two subcategories of the case of Chil Hashem of the Odom Gadol. For echod, shiasi ish chochom ma'aseh shu mutar l'chol odom el shi'aseh chesed v'hu mevukesh mimenu yosim mizulosai. You, not everyone Hashem. V'zeh ma'amor rav b'gvul Chil Hashem. The Gemara in Yuma, Peivav, Amen Aleph, going on the Shakil Nabisno, Bitavcho, Olim the Demela Alto, Claim a Shadon Kamo, Loyal Royal. Keach, Loyacher. Ye shouldn't have done such a thing. Afal P, Shezeh Hamas, Mutal Cholodo, Ukmoy Kain, Maimer Rabbi Yechanon, going on. The Masgino Arba Amos, Blay Tfilin, Blay Teira, Inyan Zeh, She'odon Kamo, Lohi Roy Lelesos. B'chol HaTalmud Odon Vasheni, Shiyeh Odom Chochom, Misnaig im Bnei Odom, Hanhoga Pchusa, Uku'ura, B'mikroi, Uv'memkoroi, Uv'maso U'matonoi. B'kabo Bnei Odom, with a complete lack of interpersonal skills.
Boy, never had this problem before of intermittent delays and drop-offs.
V'lo tia daitoi, let's do chelik hasheni, v'hasheni, sheyiyeh odom chochom misnaignu b'nei odom, hanhoga pchusa ku'ur b'mich. When he deals with people completely with audacity and kas and bizoying, v'yikal b'nei odom b'kas bizoying, v'lo tia daitoi, whoever some abriyos, v'lo yi. Es Hashem. V'chein omo alei ha-masholem, bizman nachas im abriyos, oim lois Ma habriyos oimois olov oy loy leploni shalom ateu. It's a bizayon. A little bit more in Perek Hey. Bichlal chil Hashem, v'hu shias oisem odon godol Torah u'mufusam b'chasidus. Dvorim shabriyos meranin machlo b'shvilo. V'af al pi she'eno ma'aveiros. Harei ze chilas Hashem gon shelokach v'eno noisei dmei hamekach la'alter. V'hu sheyesh loi v'nimse hamoichrim tovim v'hu makifon. He doesn't pay up. Oh, now the problem of Midas, I'm not sure. Oh, she diburo im abrios eno benachas, ve'eno makabel b'seiv upon him yofos, elo bal katota b'kas, he's constantly angry. Ukiesi b'dvorim ha'elu, hakol lefi godlo shel chochom, tzorach sheyidaktik al atzmoi, v'yasel lefnim mishus adid. Okay, beseder. Now, here, I just want to mention something. I think we'll just pick that up in Mitzvah Shem next week. There's a very interesting question over here that the Rambam opens up. It's very clearly. Who he says, his halnu mechil Hashem, alchil Hashem, who hepech kiddush Hashem, shenistavinu boy, shekodem bi'uroi b'tashiyis b'mitzaseh. So it means the law of l'yischal Hashem kochi is the opposite of kiddush Hashem. So l'cheira, I would have assumed that all of these three categories are shaykh, not only in the law of Chil Hashem, but also in the mitzvah say test of Kiddush Hashem. This is the chepech. And the interesting thing is, the Rambam in the mitzvah say of Kiddush Hashem only discusses the first category, not the second category, and not the third category. And of interest is, this is only in Sefer HaMitzvos. However, both in Mishnah Torah and in Igeres Hashmad, the Rambam has all three categories, not only in the mitzvahs, not only in the Azhora, but also in the mitzvah Aseh. And in Mitzvah Shem, we'll pick this up next week.